The next day, John was there again with 2 of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the 2 disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" They said, "Rabbi, where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. Over the past 2 to 3 years, I have found my head turned and my heart caught by the transformative glimpse of God I have experienced through Christian community. Like the 2 disciples, I have felt this glimpse feed a deeper curiosity, prompting me to follow and ultimately be invited to come and see. To this end, this 2023, I am embarking on a 6-month journey to dwell with various Christian communities. On the way, I'll be sharing interviews with community members, founders, and leaders to learn more about the blessings, challenges, and wisdom these dwelling places of God hold. In doing so, I hope to inform how it is we might nurture people and communities to be transformative manifestations of God, offering a glimpse of the divine and inviting people to come and see God's loving dwelling place.
I'm Eli Nelson. I'm a friend of Lakshmi's, who we live together in 201 Coleridge Road. Who am I? I'm a Christian. I'm a vicar's son, which is can have quite a big influence on you growing up, I think. And I grew up in a nice countryside village in Kent called Goudhurst, and studied English, and now live in Cambridge. What else? Is that a good amount of detail?
Yeah, wonderful. And so you've mentioned that you live in a community in Cambridge. And what is the journey that you've been on, or the story behind you coming to that point where you decided that you want to live in community?
So I think the short-term story is, at the last year of uni, I was not sure of what to do, and I wanted to stay in Cambridge, and I've wanted to live in community for a long time. Well, that's the long term. But there's a community in Cambridge called Lynn's House, which Lakshmi was part of, and it's a L'Arche-based community where people live with people with and without disabilities, come together for food and meetings and so on. And I really thought about living there, but in the end decided I'd rather do something more informal, just with people kind of figuring out what community would look like for us. And Lakshmi asked me if we'd like to live together and start a community, and found some amazing friends of ours, so Naomi and Gautam, who've now moved in together. So it kind of came out of the blue. But the longer term story is, I guess I've always wanted to live in community, and it's always had a real draw for me. Like, it's a word with a lot of power, you know. If some people saying when I grew up, you know, if someone had said to me, "Do you want to be in a community together?" that would probably be just about the best thing I could have heard as a young person. There was some kind of allure to being able to live peacefully with other people. That was like this kind of imagine. And I also sort of grew up in, my dad was a part of L'Arche when I was younger, so I think, yeah, lots of things meant that community is still for me this, like, I'm quite young, but it's like the amazing, if that would be this is the ideal way of living for me. So yeah, that's my journey.
Oh, thank you. And would you like to describe a bit more the community setup in 201 Coleridge Road, and tell us a bit more about it? Sure.
So it's very chill, it's very casual. We don't really have any particular it's basically the commitments that we've made to each other are to eat together at least once a week, and it normally ends out being, more than that, if not every day. And then praying together again at least once a week, which again happens more than that. And there's 5 of us living here at the moment, and I guess we wanted to, or well, it's you'd say it's better than I, but wanted a space where we could live out our Christianity together and learn from each other and figure out what it meant to us. I mean, obviously, I'm a bit earlier in the journey than we've got a few different ages here, but in a way where we also could honour the other commitments in our lives, because we've all come from very different directions. So I've just left uni. Lakshmi, you've been here for 2 years plus. What is it? What's your year? Is it in Cambridge for you?
6.5 years in Cambridge.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got thousands of friends in Cambridge, and Gautam has a son and a wife in India and is doing an engineering degree. So, and Naomi is doing lots of different church tutoring, has a fiance now. So yeah, I think the idea was that we could figure out Christianity and community together in a way that wasn't too it was kind of bottom up rather than top down, not too theological. And I mean, I'm sure there is a theology somewhere to it, but just living together and being Christian and celebrating God together.
Yeah, and to that I think I'd add the ethos of hospitality, which we did lay out as a community early on, I think, which you especially really bring to the house. From the get-go, we said that it would be a community of hospitality and that we'd have open doors. And I think we've very
open doors
honoured that. And it's been really, well, we'll get on to blessings in a bit, but I think it's been really beautiful to see our various friends come and experience the life that we've built together and be really touched by it. So I think that's really special.
And to add to that, we haven't been as radical, I think when I was at uni, I'd have imagined hospitality as meaning we'd never close the door. It would be propped open permanently with a stream of muddy boots in and out. But you're right that I think I've been surprised by how much my friends who've come to visit have been surprised and amazed at something that's really quite simple. People just living together very, very happily. I think, at least myself, I'm so happy here. And I think some people are just surprised that people can live together. Especially none of us knew each other too well before we moved here, and it's quite nice seeing people. It's funny seeing that is surprising that people can just be so full of joy living together.
Yeah, and maybe. Because we're a very diverse bunch, I wonder whether you can just maybe share the extent with which we're quite different people but still manage to live together quite well. Well, there are personality differences,
setting fire to things, or... Me and Naomi are quite different. We're all quite different, but yeah, I think I'm on the more chaotic end of the spectrum, and Naomi's somewhere more on the ordered end, and then Lakshmi and Gautam are sort of in the middle, amused by any differences. But it's worked quite well. At the start, I was like, oh my goodness, I could really cause people to be really annoyed at me if I wanted to have fires in the garden all the time, and I don't know. I haven't been that have people sleeping on the floors all the time, but. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing about community is you just end up loving people who you thought you wouldn't get along with. You just, it's Yeah, and I think,
we can start talking about blessings now. I think we've been really blessed by the culture, which just hasn't seemed to naturally kind of set. Mm-hmm. And that there are these differences, cultural differences, personality differences. I think there's just a lot of patience and love and understanding and wanting to be in each other's company, which has worked out in ways that we couldn't have expected, I think, setting out on it. So that's been a blessing for me.
Definitely.
What would you say is a highlight blessing for you out of this community?
There have been so many. So I guess going through the house, blessing the simple blessings of being in a nice, warm, lovely house. Then Gautam's cooking You're cooking, eating all together.
You're cooking, Eli. You're cooking, Eli. Eli's an amazing chef. I think people
Nothing on
know.
Gautam though. He's something else. And Gautam in general, learning from him has been amazing. He's from Chennai, South India, and this is his first time in the UK. He came straight from Stansted, I think, to the house.
Yeah.
So it was, full on culture shock for him. But he's been so gracious and given us so much love and time, and we've learned so much from him.
Very godly presence as well.
He really is. He's something else.
I think it does feel very God-given that he came to this community. And for me, it's been a real blessing that through him I've been able to reconnect with my South Indian heritage. So that's been really,
awesome.
really
lovely. And I'll say that in a bit, but that when your family came and we had this amazing chat about arranged marriages with my friend who's a policeman from Kent, and Gautam, who's, I don't know, they're quite worlds apart in some ways, and it was just it was the most amazing thing about it. Anyway, that was a blessing. Living with
Lakshmi,
Lakshmi,
you can dig deeper into that if you like.
Well, it was great. It was just Lakshmi's family came round. Lakshmi's parents are awesome, and Lakshmi's sister, and then it was my friend Kieran and Gautam, and I don't know how we got talking about it, but we talked about marriage a lot and arranged marriage, and it was just an incredible conversation. It was like everyone was listening to each other and learning from each other, and a really profound, and one of the conversations that could be quite moving, and I don't know, you have to be quite vulnerable, and it was just amazing how it felt like these opposite worlds were bridged through that. That was great.
I was really moved by how moved Kieran was from his stay with us.
Yeah, he really... Kieran decided he wanted to have a Christian wife and live in Cambridge after that.
Not being a Christian.
Not being a Christian himself. That's the power of community. But other blessings. Living with Lakshmi is obviously a blessing. You've been great at Lakshmi. You're just a wonderful person who just brings people and love and all around you. And
I think you do it even more, Eli. So.
Oh, don't. Anyway, Naomi's also, I think, like I said, being quite different has been amazing, and it's been a blessing realising that you can definitely just come to really love people who at first you'd be you wouldn't think that you'd even get along, and then you can have so much fun in their company.
I think for me it highlights the image of body of Christ, and I think community is very good at bringing that out, and that you can be so different worlds apart, and then it's that being so different which becomes an asset. So I think Naomi's orderliness has been such a blessing in helping sort out the bills and instigating cleaning and all of that stuff, and then equally just how open you are and your ability to just be with people and knock on neighbours' doors, and kind of Gautam's prayerfulness and godliness, and all these personalities complementing to be this really joyful and complementary body of Christ. So I think that's a blessing of community which I've really experienced, and which I feel here as well. Yeah, which is really nice.
I think I found it kind of amazing that I've never felt since we moved here obliged by anything. I've just looked forward to coming home so much. And we always end up being together. It's just living with friends, except there is a intentionality about it, and I think
feels like family.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's definitely enabled by kind of the rhythms of prayer, and obviously of eating together. But I think it's definitely the knowledge that at the heart of it we're all kind of celebrating and motivated by the same, well, not the same things. How to say it? Talking about God's always very difficult for me, or elusive.
Yeah. There's a thread. I wonder whether the fact that we're a small community adds that family element. I think there are probably very different vibes to different communities depending on size. And I think because we're a group of 5 people in a house, it lends itself quite well to a close-knit community. Which is what we were all kind of looking for, so I think that's worked out really well. How about, it's early days still, we've been together for about 6 how approaching 6 months as a community. How has anything been more challenging, or anything which you're starting to experience a challenge? I think this is kind of the period when you start coming out of the honeymoon phase of community, and that certain things come into play.
The honeymoon phase.
The honeymoon phase of community.
Interesting. I mean, in some ways it's been a reverse honeymoon. Like at the start I was like, oh, this, oh, I wonder, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And then it's all chilled out. But challenges of living in a community, because mostly I found that this is like the thing that isn't challenging. You know, I've just left uni and started looking for jobs, and this has been the like one thing that's been like just 100% good and with no, you know, just lovely to do. But what have been the challenges? I might have to take a rain check on answering that one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there have been. Oh, I tell you what, living with. So we've also, I forgot to mention, sorry Jacob, that with the fifth member of our community is me and Jacob are sharing a room. And Jacob's not Christian, but that's added a whole new take on things. And sharing a room with him has been challenging in some ways because it's quite close contact.
It's very close contact.
And then, I think also the fact that he's not Christian has been a challenge too, because it's something that I'm always conflicted, because I want to be evangelical, but without using, you know, even evangelize if necessary, use words. It's kind of my take on it. Whereas Gautam it's really funny because he's far more open about it with, but I think I've it's not a challenge but a question about how much to, kind of, explain or talk to or raise faith as an issue with Jacob, because obviously it's all around him. Like we've got these rhythms and like that's something that he's kind of experiencing, and so that's been a question. But living very closely with people, I think, presents like questions of how much personal space we need, at what times you need it, and so on. Yeah.
I think for me personally, what's been more challenging is we found it hard to find regular rhythms of prayer. So that's something that I've personally found more challenging. I think that is just because we're a group of 5 young adults trying to align schedules. So that's just been a learning point for me, is that it is actually quite hard to have a deeper, like, new monastic element to young adult communities, depending what they're all up to. Because Gautam leaves the house at like 7 in the morning, and me and Naomi kind of have chronic fatigue sometimes, so it kind of makes it hard, and out on evenings and things. So that's something that I've found
definitely
harder, and that I guess I'm now seeking as maybe something with more definitive prayerful rhythms.
7 prayers a day, Vespers, midnight prayer. If you want it now, just no, that's a very good point. I've also on that front, you reminded me, I think where we live, none of our neighbours really know each other. Everyone knows one person on either side of them. And I find it really unusual being in a place where there are people who've lived here for 10 years and only know one other person on the street. And I find that really strange. And obviously that's something that we can do something about very quickly just by knocking on a door. But I find it weird being somewhere where no one feels like is inquisitive about us, or there's no obligation to interact with the community. And that's a challenge in a good way, right? That's almost a challenge to do something about it. Although obviously everyone's busy, us included, but to try and get people over, and we had knocked on a bunch of neighbours' doors and invited them over for the football, which England tragically lost with all our neighbours there. No, but we had a great time. But I think more of that, and I think it would almost be good to have made time, like a week or so at the start of moving in, to have just kept knocking on loads of doors and get to know as many people as possible, because that's something that's quite important to me. To have that sense of community in a place and the people around.
And that's something which has really stood out to me and you, is your ability to just approach people. And that is a real gift of yours, and a real gift that you've brought to this community and to this neighbourhood. So the fact that it is a kind of city, kind of more keep yourself to yourself neighbourhood, and the fact that you've kind of broken that and going along with you, and that was really helpful for me as like this isn't too bad at all, and to see people's kind of faces of surprise, being like, what are you doing here, and then being really pleasantly surprised when it's just like, we're your neighbours, do you want to come round for mince pies and mulled wine? So that's been a real gift for me.
Cheers,
learning from you, and a real gift, which I look forward to seeing flourish. You've touched about this a bit already in terms of like learning about personal space. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up in terms of anything that you've learned? I guess I've learned about, for me, the regularity of prayer is important. Does anything else come out for you?
Of things I think I've realised are important, or
just things that you've learned, or that your experience of community so far, of this community, has highlighted to you.
Yeah, I think a lot of faith and love and stuff kind of can go unspoken or silently, and that's something I've appreciated, is just that we all are there for each other, and that it's kind of like I've appreciated that it feels like we all share such strong convictions and motivations without ever having real debates or discussions, and I'd appreciate that too, but it's just nice to know that we that there's something at the heart. I've really appreciated that. I agree that the prayer's been really good, and that's something that it would be good to have more of. What else have I learned? Yeah, I think I really cared about this before, but it's made me appreciate even more the importance of like food and eating together. That's something I really care about.
I think you've had. I really like the point about the gentleness of the way that we're living together, because it's true in my previous housing community there has been more like explicitly theological chat. I've lived with theologians and there'd be like deep chat many evenings, and like for us it's not so much that, but there's a simplicity in sharing in the food and sharing in the games. Gareth, I'm just like coming straight over from India and therefore having slightly more limited English, and just different fields of interest, but like a real gentleness and real strength for that, because I remember a week where I was like really unwell and that just being lifted by just the presence of people
100%.
And just like really, really hospitable in a very natural and gentle way, which I've been very touched by.
And we could have all got super theological if we wanted to, I think, but I think there's just, it felt like
it hasn't been us as a group. It's not necessarily us as a group.
And I think often if you have a lot in common, it's very safe to have lots of very intense debates. But often if you're coming from very different places, debates can be more tricky. And I mean, that's a roundabout way of saying, because we're all quite different, it feels like, I mean, the way we interact with ideas isn't, in a kind of competitive, like argumentative style. It's like a lot softer, and I guess that's one of the advantages of community, that you can, live with people who are so different and
learn from that, because
in a quiet way.
Because for people who are listening, me and Eli vaguely knew each other before living together, but otherwise as a community, we all moved in not knowing each other, and the diversity of us has been a real gift.
About new monasticism, because one thing, I reading Shane Claiborne before I came here, I was definitely like, new monasticism is the way. And I guess would you say that anyone can be new monastic? Is any like lay community a new monastic community, or is it like, what would you, sorry.
Oh, now you're asking me a question.
Is it theologically, sorry.
It's fine. I guess that's why I'm touring communities, to gain a better sense. And I think the thing with community, there's a lot of different language out there, like lay community, intentional lay community, intentional Christian community, intentional spiritual community, new monastic community. And I think it's quite vague language, and different people relate to different words. Yeah, nice. So, which I'll hopefully be exploring in this podcast series. I also really wanted to ask you about any favourite stories or memories which you feel kind of encapsulate something of our life in community. I think we've got quite a few. It can be a funny one, but something which you think kind of...
Well, the one that sprung to mind was but this is a terrible example. It's just when I went out to wee in the garden, that says nothing about the community, but it's just the first thing that came into my head. So I'll say it. Basically, I went out to have a wee in the garden, which again is, some people might find a bit odd, but then...
And which some people in the community find odd.
Yeah, which Naomi finds odd. And then Lakshmi was in the garden also, we've got some bushes, and she was like hidden by the bushes, like dancing in the night. And I saw her, and I didn't scream, but I almost did. And I don't know how scared you were, but we were both like caught in the act of secret night dancing and secret night weeing. And Lakshmi was like, "No, it's fine, you can wee," and I was like, "No," and I ran away. Well, I didn't run away, but that was quite early into living together.
That made me happy.
That was nice.
I appreciated your freedom,
Yeah, well, So Lakshmi dancing in the garden. Jacob also dances in the garden at night. That's just lovely. I used to dance in gardens at night, but now I just feel like vicariously that's I can just enjoy. It's just nice knowing there's someone dancing in your garden. That's a good encapsulation, like joy permanently moving. Like somewhere there's.
I'd like to mention Super Glue Scrabble, which I am now going to take to any communities which I potentially found, if that becomes a thing. Eli has a knack for acquiring free things and acquiring things in charity shops, and acquired a second Scrabble set in a charity shop, and was like, "We can play Super Glue Scrabble." And did you just make that up as a concept?
Yeah,
on the cuff.
Too much spare time.
And so as a community, we sat down after dinner and played Scrabble, where every word was then superglued once it was laid. And then Naomi had the great idea of relating every word that we played to the community. And I think that was about 3 months in. And it just felt like a really special moment of bonding. I think it was just at the right time in our development as a community together, and just bonding around this board and laughing at words and relating it back to our community, and the fact that we already had a shared sense of humour and shared stories from that 3 months together, and super gluing them to a Scrabble board felt really significant. And we now have that Scrabble board in the living room. So that for me is a special memory. Yeah.
Any more memories needed? There's loads more, but I feel like
Do you have one more?
Not on the tip of my tongue, so I may have overpromised. I like having fires in the garden all together. I like playing music all together a lot.
Oh, that's nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a good life together.
We do.
So this is your first experience of living in community. We're about 5-6 months in, I think. But what advice would you give to someone like me or other people who are interested in community living, either as a member, either as people who are looking to kind of found communities or nurture communities? What advice would you give them based off your experience? That might be challenges that you would caution against, or actions to mitigate those challenges, or things which you feel are absolutely essential to community life, which you think that every community should have and should stick to. So from your experience so far, what is the advice that you would give to people interested in community living, Christian community living?
I think a few things. I think before moving into community, the one thing that I was a bit nervous of was moving into just, a group of Christians who didn't have a particularly certain idea of what community meant to them and were figuring it out as they went along. I was like, that's probably a recipe for disaster. I now realise that's probably the best thing ever, and I'm like, I'd just say, if you're to my past self at least, wondering about living with Christians and trying to, just on the basis of faith, which I was cautious about, just do it. That was the best decision ever, and it's just a recipe for a lot of stability and love and feeling really safe and confirmed in faith and known and loved and etc. So I'd say that's definitely first thing I'd say is kind of go for it. Secondly, another point that I think before this I'd have felt nervous, and obviously it's a case by case experience, but I think the idea of not knowing people and like Gautam being from such a different cultural context, I think you know, you could be like, oh, let's play it safe and be with people who come from similar backgrounds to me. But that's just completely been blown out the water by how great it's, like, just how wonderful it's been and how much learning there's been. And I guess the worry might be that Christianity can be so different as to not bind you together. But I think, at least from experience, it's been all it's proven is that faith in God is, like, so deep that there's no boundary that's too big. And I sincerely trust that, like, if we were in community with people who even we didn't have a common language with, we'd still have an amazing time, maybe even better time, you know, that actually living with people who are really different to you just kind of, if anything, gives for a richer experience of life. So those would be 2 takeaways, I guess.
Yeah. I think this is going to lead us into our next question. The diversity that you've mentioned, I really see something of God in that. It's kind of seeing God in, like, the diversity of people. And I think the blessing of community is that you're living with people who you wouldn't necessarily be friends with otherwise, or like who you wouldn't be friends with otherwise.
Definitely.
It just mushes people together, and then you get to know people at a real depth. And I think in that depth of people, I personally find God in that. But as a closing question, have you experienced God more strongly in your life and community? And if so, how and where?
Great question. I think I've said it a few times, but probably it comes back to a type of stability. And I think when I was, like, in life, generally living, like, in the world, as it were, or, like, you know, with people who aren't Christians, it's more, well, I normally have quite big swings generally in faith in life, but I think then it was quite extreme, you know. One day I'd be like, I need to, you know, do everything for God, and then the next day I'd be like, I need to put it on pause. And I think what this has given me is a real, like, deep and quiet confidence in faith, and in, like, the kind of the peace that passeth all understanding, and you know, all the comforting words in the Anglican tradition, like the idea that faith is a comforter, and not just a turbulent thing. And I think, so in terms of experience of God, it's been more of a constant awareness of God than, like, big dramatic moments. And that's what I've been really grateful for, because most of my life I have big dramatic God moments of, you know, I need to leave behind all my possessions, blah, 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 do this and that. And here it's just been like, it's okay, God is here. You don't need to change everything. Life itself is blessed. Whatever you're doing in life can be done for God. And the act of living itself is done for God. So a sort of, a very peaceful knowledge of God, I'd say, yeah.
Well, on that very peaceful note, thank you very much for your time, Eli.
Thanks, Lakshmi.
And really lovely to hear kind of your reflections on our 5 or 6 months together in community.
It's been a great 6 months.
Thank you.
Cool beans.
Show me your